In this video, I'm going to look at rearranging formula that includes squares. But before I do that, I just want to remind you that the inverse of a square is a square root. So for example, in this equation, we have x squared is equals to 5. We want to find x. And the only way to do that is by finding the square root of the left hand side. And because it's an equation, we also have to find the square root of the right hand side. Now, the square root of x, x squared is just x. The square root of 5 is just square root of 5. Or we can find the answer, but we'll just leave it as it is. Okay? And we can apply the same process to the right hand side. So basically here, x will be equal to the square root of h, because the opposite of squaring is square rooting. And that will be our final solution. Next example, we have 3x squared is equals to 7. The first step is to get rid of the 3 by dividing by 3 on each side. 3 divided by 3 will be equal to 1. So x squared is equals to 7 over 3. And then you can go ahead and just write x will be equal to the square root of 7 over 3. Why? Because the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 7 over 3 is just the square root of 7 over 3, what we have there. Okay. Next, we can apply the same process on this question. So start by dividing by g on each side. And g divided by g will be equal to 1. So what we end up with is x squared is equals to h over g. And the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So square root of h over g will be equal to x. All right, example 2. Solve for x. And again, the first step here is to start by getting rid of the positive 3. What we have here, positive 3. The opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. So we subtract 3 on each side. 3 minus 3, that will be equal to 0. So what you're left with is 5 minus 3 will be equal to 2. So 2 is equals to x squared. Now, and the square root of x squared is x, and the square root of 2 is just square root of 2. Okay? Or the opposite of squaring x is square rooting 2. So x is equals to the square root of 2. Another way to look at it is just get the square root of each of these guys, and you'll get x is equals to the square root of 2. Okay, so we can apply the same process here. So subtract k from each side. So what we shall end up with is m minus k is equals to x squared, because k minus k is 0. And then here we can just say the opposite of squaring x is square rooting the other side. So we can just say x is equals to the square root of m minus k. We can apply the same processes to these other questions here. So the first step will be adding 4 on each side. So 12 plus 4, that will be 16. And these guys will be 0, because negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So 7x squared. The opposite of multiplying by 7 is dividing by 7. So you divide by 7. Divide by 7. 7 divided by 7, that will be equal to 1. So what you end up with is 16 over 7 is equals to x squared. The opposite of squaring x is square rooting. So square root of 16 over 7. And that will be your final solution. Okay, we can apply the same process to the right. So add g on each side. So v plus g is equals to 2a x squared. By inspection, you can see that 2a is multiplied by x squared, and the opposite of multiplying by 2a is dividing by 2a. So basically, we'll uh, perform that inverse operation of dividing by 2a. 2a divided by 2a is 1. So our what we shall end up with is v plus g over 2a is equals to x squared, which means that x will be equal to the square root of v plus g over 2a. Okay, next question, example 3. Solve for x. The first step will be getting rid of the denominator. The opposite of dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3. So we multiply by 3 on each side. 3 by 3, that will be equal to 1. So we are left with 15 is equals to 2x squared. The opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. So we divide by 2 on each side. And we are left with 15 over 2 is equals to, that will be equal to 1. So just x squared. Which means that x will be equal to the square root of 15 over 2. We can apply the same process on the right hand side. Multiply by a. A divided by a, that will be equal to 1. So we're just left with at is equals to nx squared. And x is multiplied by n. The opposite of multiplying by n is dividing by n. So we divide by n on each side. And n divided by n is 1. So we are left with 80 over n is equals to x squared, which means that x will be the square root of 80 over n. Next question, solve for x. So what we need to do here is we need to get rid of the denominator, multiply the whole of this guy by 3, multiply that by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So you are left with a simple equation. 6 is equals to x squared minus 5. The opposite of subtracting 5 is adding 5. So we add 5 on each side. What we end up with is 11 is equals to x squared, because this will be equal to 0. So x will be equal to square root of 11. We can apply the same process to the right. Start by multiplying by v. So if we multiply it by v and multiply it by v on the left, so v divided by v is equals to 1. So we are left with vp is equal to x squared minus h. Add h to each side. H minus h, or negative h plus h, will be equal to 0. So we are left with vp plus h is equals to x squared, which means that x will be equal to the square root of vp plus h. Okay, next example. On the left, the first step will be multiplying this by 3, because we need to get rid of the denominator. Let's multiply by 3. So the first step is, well, these two cancel. So what you're left with is, that's 15 is equals to 7x squared minus 2. The opposite of subtracting 2 is adding 2. Negative 2 plus 2, that will be 0. So basically what you're left with here is 17 is equals to 7x squared. The opposite of multiplying by 7 is dividing by 7. So we divide by 7 on each side. 7 divided by 7 will be equal to 1. So 17 over 7 is equals to x squared. Or we can say x will be equal to square root of 17 over 7. Okay, we can use the same process to work out this question on the right. So we need to get rid of t. So start by multiplying by t on each side. T divided by t will be equal to 1. So you're left with tp is equals to ax squared plus b. The next step is subtracting b on each side. So we will be left with the tp minus b is equals to ax squared plus 0, because we have nothing left. Basically, b minus b will be equal to 0. The next step is dividing by a. So a divided by a is 1. So we are left with tp minus b over a is equals to x squared. Or x will be equal to the square root of tp minus b over a.